Hello YouTube and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we're playing Mount & Blade Bannerlord and specifically taking a look at the Realm of Thrones mod. So that's the Game of Thrones conversion mod that is probably the most well polished right now. And we're going to be going through the 9 best one-handed weapons that the mod adds to the game. So these are the weapons that outside of all of the stock vanilla weapons that still exist in the game from Bannerlord, these ones have been added, and actually stat-wise they're better than any of the ones that were in the game before. So even if I was including the vanilla weapons, which I'm not, none of them would be on this list because all of these weapons are better. So we're just going to go through them. We're just ranking them stat-wise. It's not about appearances because obviously my own personal preference would be a little bit different than this ranking, but let's just go through them from 9 being the worst of them to 1 being the best. And we'll start off with number 9. And so starting us off at number 9, we have the Jaime Lannister sword. So this is not a Valyrian Steel Sword. It's the sword that you see Jaime Lannister using in the first season of the TV show, and it actually looks quite a bit like it. They did a good job replicating it. For our stats on this one, we've got a weight of 1.5. Weapon tier is 6, swing speed of 92, swing damage of 89, thrust speed of 90, thrust damage of 49, length of 102, and handling of 92. So you can see this one is actually a pretty cool looking sword. I'm a fan of the design of it. In fact, I think it looks a little bit better than it does in the television show, just because the one in the show looks a little bit weirdly proportioned, and this one fixes most of that. But yeah, like I said, it's just a standard castle forged steel sword. It's not Valyrian steel. As far as getting this one goes, obviously Jaime Lannister possesses it, and he is a recruitable companion in this mod, so if you want to get your hands on it, that's one way to do it. Other than that, I've also looted it on the battlefield when defeating Lannister soldiers, so it is also a sword that can appear elsewhere in the game. Relatively common as far as all the weapons on this list go, but yeah, I really like this one, and it does take the number 9 spot, so like I said, it's the worst on this list, but still better than pretty much every other weapon in the game, or at least every other one-handed weapon in the game. So yeah, that's number 9, the Jaime Lannister sword. Let's move on to number 8. And so at number 8, we have Lightbringer, and now I'm just going to go ahead and assume that this is the Lightbringer of the book/television show, which is Stannis' sword, which isn't actually the real Lightbringer, because if it was the real Lightbringer, you'd think it would be the best sword in the game. But this one does come in at the number 8 spot, being just slightly better than the Jaime Lannister sword. For the weight on this one, it's 1.4. It is a tier 6 weapon, has a swing speed of 97, swing damage of 89, thrust speed of 92, thrust damage of 53, length of 94, and handling of 97. So all pretty solid stats across the board. As for the appearance of this one, I think it's traditional looking cruciform style arming sword. Proportionally, it's pretty dang good. Obviously, the grip is just a little bit on the short side, considering the length of the blade, but that would still be not out of the realm of possibility for what is normal. Design-wise, it looks pretty dang cool. Again, like I said, it does look quite a bit like the one that Stannis uses in the show, except for the fact that it's got the gold crossguard and otherwise gold accents, and I don't think his did in the show. I could be wrong, I'm just going off memory, not comparing it against a photo, but I think his was a regular sort of steel look to it for the accents on the handle and the pommel and such. But outside of that, the only other issue I take with this one is maybe a limitation of the mod currently, and maybe the mod author plans to update this in the future. But Lightbringer was supposed to have a colorful blade that kind of changed colors depending on the position it was in and everything, and I think that would have been a cooler look than just the standard castle forged steel look that it has, even though it is very bright, which I like given the fact that the sword is named Lightbringer. But with all that in mind, that is the number 8 spot on this list. Let's move on to number 7. Alright, and so at number 7 we have Widow's Wail, the first Valyrian steel sword on this list, and it looks pretty dang identical to what it looks like in the show, so that's definitely where we're getting our inspiration here. Stats on this one, it's a weight of 1.4, weapon tier 6, swing speed of 96, swing damage of 91, thrust speed of 92, thrust damage of 52, length of 96, and handling of 96, so pretty solid stats. Again, like I said, appearance is pretty much straight out of the show. I like the appearance of Valyrian steel in this game. The blade looks quite good from that perspective, not overdone, but definitely you can see the iconic Valyrian style there. The rest of the sword looks pretty dang great. Grip is a little bit wide, but other than that, it basically perfectly matches how we got to see it in the show, so I like it for that reason. As far as getting your hands on this one, it is wielded by Joffrey Baratheon, so if you can figure out how to get your hands on it from him, that's one way to do it. But other than that, I've also seen it pop up, if you've got a high roguery level, I've seen it pop up when defeating Lannister armies in the field, so possibly it is just a really rare piece of loot. But yeah, like I said, you can get your hands on it through a couple different methods in the game. Either way, it is obtainable through various different methods, like all the weapons in Bannerlord. If it exists, it has a possibility of spawning, and so this one is like that. It's just obviously, like all of the Valyrian steel swords in the game, are going to be pretty rare. So yeah, that's Widow's Wail, which takes the number 7 spot. Let's move on to number 6. Alright, and so at number 6 we have the Valyrian Steel Sword Type 2, and now actually at the number 6 spot there are 3 of them. The Valyrian Steel Sword Type 2, 3, 3, and 4. All of them have the exact same stats and look pretty much exactly the same as far as I can tell. Slight differences here and there, but they look pretty much exactly the same. So as far as stats on this one, we have a weight of 1.4, weapon tier 6, swing speed of 95, swing damage of 92, thrust speed of 92, thrust damage of 52, length of 100, and handling of 94. And now for this one, I actually found it to be a pretty common, obviously late game, you know, with a high roguery and defeating large armies, but I actually found all of the Valyrian Steel Swords, so the generalized ones, the type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, to be pretty common loot, probably more common than the mod author intended, considering how rare Valyrian steel weapons are in, you know, the lore. But yeah, this one is one that, or these types of generic Valyrian Steel Swords are ones that are actually not that hard to get your hands on in the mod. As far as appearances on this one, I actually really like the way this one looks. It's got a more muted style to it. Obviously, the blade is still a longsword blade, and it still has the cool Valyrian steel look to it, but the crossguard grip and pommel are more, like I said, more muted, more realistic sword looking. So I actually really like the style of this one, and it both is, so it's better than all three of the ones we've looked at so far, both in stats and appearance. I think I actually really like the way this one looks. So like I said, at this spot, at number 6, it's the Valyrian Steel Sword type 2, 3, and 4, because they all have the exact same stats. So yeah, that's number 6. Let's move on to number 5. And so at number 5, we have Lion Tooth, the sword that Joffrey Baratheon gets before the Battle of the Blackwater. I believe this is the one that he made Sansa kiss. I could be wrong. I could be confusing it with the sword that Arya throws into the river. I know at one point he has a sword named Lion Tooth, and that's clearly what this is supposed to be. Stats for this one, we have a weight of 1.4, weapon tier 6, swing speed of 96, swing damage of 92, thrust speed of 92, thrust damage of 52, length of 98, and handling of 95. So again, pretty dang good stats, being better than obviously all of the other swords that we've looked at so far on this list. As far as appearances on this one go, it's got a pretty fancy style to it. I actually think it looks a lot like Widow's Wail, which makes me wonder if in the show they intended them to be so similar. So maybe like when Tywin Lannister was commissioning the Valyrian Steel Swords, he modeled Widow's Wail specifically after the sword that Joffrey already had. I think that's possible. So that would be interesting because it does look a lot like it, just with a Castle Forged steel blade instead of Valyrian steel. But interestingly, like I said, stat-wise, this one is actually better than Widow's Wail and Lightbringer and all, you know, all the other swords that we've looked at so far. So quite a good sword, very good weapon. I like the way it looks. I think it's a pretty fancy looking weapon. If you want to have a flashy arming sword, this is probably a good option. So that's Lion Tooth, number 5. Let's move on to number 4. So at number 4, we have the Valyrian Steel Sword type 1, and it's actually types 1, 5, 6, and 7. They all have exactly the same stats. So you can see it's a bit of a longer, skinnier one. Stat-wise on this one, we have a weight of 1.4. It's a tier 6 weapon, swing speed of 93, swing damage of 93, thrust speed of 92, thrust damage of 55, length of 103, and handling of 92. Like I said, appearance on this one, I like the way it looks. It's the crossguard looks a little goofy in my opinion, but it's got a slightly longer blade to it and a slightly longer grip. I would actually kind of like it if it was a bastard sword instead of a one-handed sword, but it is what it is, and I think it looks pretty cool. And again, like all of the generic weapons, the generic Valyrian steel weapons, it's actually pretty common in battle loot, so especially late game. So yeah, that is number 4. Like I said, that's types 1, 5, 6, and 7. Let's move on to number 3. So at number 3, we have Lady Forlorn, and this one is one that in the books, I want to say it's owned by one of the Corbrays, so one of the nobles in the Vale. Again, not looking this up, just trying to remember. I don't remember which Corbray, but I believe one of them owns Lady Forlorn. So it's a famous Valyrian steel sword. So for stats on this one, we have a weight of 1.4. It's a tier 6 weapon, swing speed of 94, swing damage of 94, thrust speed of 92, thrust damage of 54, length of 101, and handling of 94. Again, for appearances on this one, it's got a pretty standard and traditional look to it. I think I would probably like it better if the crossguard wasn't gold, just because, you know, I like the black accents on the ends of the crossguard, and I think maybe they look a little weird with the gold. But outside of that, I do think it looks pretty good. It's got a good balance. It doesn't look too hefty like Widow's Wail does, and the blade has a slightly more subtle, but you can still tell it's got the Valyrian steel pattern on it. So I quite like Lady Forlorn, and obviously stat-wise, it's the 3rd best out of all these, so quite good, and that is number 3. All right, so at number 2, we have Dark Sister, one of the 2 Targaryen Valyrian steel swords that went missing some time ago in the current storyline. So these ones, we're not sure where they are. There's Blackfire and Dark Sister. Neither one of them is accounted for, but this is one of the Targaryen swords. So for stats on this one, we have a weight of 1.4. It is a tier 6 weapon. We have a swing speed of 90, swing damage of 96, thrust speed of 92, thrust damage of 55, length of 115, and handling of 89. So again, obviously very good stats. As for the appearance, I don't much care for this one. It's got a long skinny blade, which I think is pretty cool. It's got a unique look to it. I hate how big the crossguard crossguard it is ridiculously long. For a one-handed weapon to have a crossguard that wide is pretty ridiculous. If this were a two-handed greatsword, something like a giant claymore or something like that, then it would make sense, but then the grip would be much longer. It would be a two-handed sword. I don't like how wide the crossguard is. Other than that, I think it looks fine, and obviously stat-wise it's great. So yeah, that's Dark Sister at number 2. Finally, at number 1, we've got the other sword that was made out of ice, Oathkeeper. This one has a weight of 1.3, it's a tier 6 weapon, has a swing speed of 93, swing damage of 98, thrust speed of 93, thrust damage of 52, length of 112, and handling of 90. So very good, obviously, across the board. This one is wielded, or at least the worn version of it, I believe, is wielded by Brienne of Tarth, and she's a recruitable companion. So if you want to get your hands on a version of it, that is one way to do it. Obviously, it's one of the coolest, most iconic swords from the series, and so I feel like a lot of people are going to want to get their hands on it. Appearance-wise in the game, I think it looks quite good. Obviously, they did a good job of matching it to what it looks like in the show. I like the dimensions of it. It doesn't look unwieldy in any way. Unlike Widow's Wail, it doesn't have like a weirdly wide grip, which I appreciate. And obviously, the blade has the more subtle but still iconic Valyrian steel pattern on it. So quite good all the way around. And like I said, Oathkeeper takes the number 1 spot for the best one-handed weapons in Realm of Thrones. And that's all for today. So that's 9 through 1. Hopefully this video was useful or at least entertaining for you. And I hope you enjoyed it, but we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you liked this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.